Hello and welcome to the interview. With me today is a very special guest, a man who's been a victim of the Chinese state. He calls himself a survivor though. One day he was a college student, the next day he was in jail, and on the third day he was banished from his home. He continues to live in exile in the US. This is the story of Fengsuo Zhou. He's joining us from New York tonight. Fengsuo Zhou, thank you very much for being with us on WION. And I've read about you, but I want to hear your story from you. You were a fourth-year physics student at Tsinghua University in 1989 when you participated in the Tiananmen Square protest. Communist China has always crushed protest. Did you think yours would be different?
Yes, of course. At that time, the massacre, it was brutal and then senseless. It was a complete surprise to everyone, including even some high-ranking government officials, because the support we got 31 years ago in Beijing, all over the country, was overwhelming. In Beijing, pretty much, I think every day there are just hundreds of thousands of people on Tiananmen Square showing support for the students' call for freedom and democracy very peacefully. Before the massacre, for Chinese people, it was like a festival of freedom in Beijing. So that's why it was such a surprise. Even though we knew before that communist China, the Communist Party, was brutal, but we believe this time it was different, because we had such an overwhelming support from every walks of the society, even government officials, soldiers. The more, after 31 years, the more I know, the more I'm convinced about this. It was a brutal massacre orchestrated by these hardliners like Deng Xiaoping, but a very small group of people who control the real power, the military power, that did it to the Communist Party, to the whole country.
Can you describe for our viewers what happened in 1989?
So we have to start before that. So after the death of Wu Yaobang, who was the previous party leader of the Communist Party, there were widespread demonstrations calling for reaffirmation of his political prestige. That's how the protests came about. It was more of like appeal to the Communist Party to do the right thing. And then we occupied the Tiananmen Square from May 13 to 3rd of June, when the massacre happened. So later, we knew that Deng Xiaoping, who was the military leader, even though he was just, he didn't have any position within the Communist Party. He was only the leader of the military.
You were put in a jail for a year. How did you manage to leave China?
I was released at the most favored nation debate at the US Congress. So it was as a gesture for changing the human rights situation. But after I was released, I was actually not allowed to leave China for 4 years, even though I had scholarship to study physics in Japan, in the United States. I was denied a passport, and I was followed everywhere. I couldn't continue my study. I couldn't get a normal job. So I had to start my own company. And fortunately enough, the stock market came into being at that time. So I was able to make a living by trading stocks, which is relatively independent of the government. I left China in January of '95. I came to United States. And finally, they allowed me to leave.
It's been so many years. Do you believe that you'll ever be able to return home, that in your lifetime, China will have space for dissent and dissenters?
I hope I would go to China in the future at my own will, but I don't know when. It could be next year or could be in 10 years. Of course, whether China could be democratized in my lifetime, that's an open question. I was very optimistic in the past, but now I'm no longer so. Yeah. Even though my belief hasn't changed, but we need to fight long and hard against this animal, this monster. So I don't really know when I go back. But for now, there's no peace between me and this brutal totalitarian regime. As long as they are in power, I will not go to China peacefully.
Do the Chinese people still want democracy according to you, or have they settled for a bargain? They've settled for economic prosperity in the place of democracy?
Actually, I think the question is uncertain. We don't really know. So, 10 years ago, if you ask this question, probably most people will give you more positive answer. But today, probably not. It's not because that the Chinese people has changed much. I think it's just the so-called public opinion today. It's so successfully manipulated, to show a facade, to show an illusion. We don't really know the truth. But from what I know, the people I can contact, these people, we support the political prisoners, the freedom fighters. These people are still strong. They are still fighting. And every year, we can see from the other side, first, they use more money to defend this regime against its own people. There's a so-called stabilization fund, which is bigger than the national defense. Think about that. China's national defense is already huge. But the money they use to control its own people is more than national defense. Does that mean that they have the consensus of Chinese people to support them? No. It means exactly the contrary. So we don't really know. I mean, from what I know, I think there's a lot of uncertainties there. But it is true that the constant brainwashing and minutes, even seconds, surveillance, facial recognition, artificial intelligence, big data, they are putting a big pressure on civil society. There's no civil society in China. There's no individuality in China because everybody, every organization is constantly being watched at every second. They can even predict your next move. This kind of technology advancement is never seen before. That's what we are facing. So in the near term, there are really some huge hurdles to overcome. But we don't really know. For example, recently, there are lots of protests of the Mongolian people just for speaking their own language. You probably don't see it in Chinese media anywhere. If you're living in China, it's all prosperous, just everybody living a good life, maybe except yourself. But there are miseries, there are protests, there are people being killed, being tortured. You just don't see it in public space.
Are you in touch with your family? Were they also punished for your actions in 1989?
I'm trying to keep a wall between me and my family because I don't want them to be implicated in any way and form. So I don't contact them. I don't talk to them. I only send some seasonal greetings at holidays. That's all. I don't want to hear from them because the way they control now, they can just coerce everyone into being their agent. And for that, to be honest, I can't trust my family. So the best way, I always advise everyone, who is brave enough to speak up against CCP from outside of China. So if you want to keep doing this, the best way is to keep distance from your family, because the minute they know they can influence you from your family, both you and your family will be in danger. That's what I'm trying to do.
Frankly, I can't imagine what you've been through. A young student stands up for his beliefs, and then his life is turned upside down, and he's exiled from his country, he's cut off from his family. What is it like to have your life changed completely for a cause that the world has largely forgotten? Do you feel defeated?
That's a very tough question. I didn't sign up for this, when I was young, college student. But I never regret. To me, it's such an honor. The moment I became famous was when the CCP broadcasted the list of the most wanted student leaders, and I was number 5. I was shocked, stunned. At the same time, I was deeply, profoundly proud. This was something that I would definitely identify my life with. But of course, I would never imagine, even after 1 year in prison, I would never imagine that such a brutal regime could survive for so long. And 31 years is definitely too long. But to me, even if it's just myself now, sometimes I am isolated, not only from my family in China, but here in the United States, because the Chinese community here, they are largely controlled, infiltrated by the government. And when they see me, everybody would stay away. So I'm being isolated everywhere. But at the same time, to me, this is such a great honor. It's such a duty that I would never shy away from. This is it was not my original choice, but for now I see it as an honor, and I do see changing China, democratizing China, as the most important job in the world. And to me, it's great to be part of it.
You've given 31 years of your life to this cause. 31 years on, do you still believe that justice will be done, that China will be held accountable for its actions?
I think if you look back, that's what we believe. 31 years for human life is too long. But in history, it's just a blip. And they can't change history. Justice will be done. But we just have to fight for it. We cannot wait for it.
In 2014, you visited Hong Kong during the umbrella movement protest. Can you still visit Hong Kong after the national security law, or is the city now out of bounds for you?
No, actually, last year, during the anti-extradition law movement, so this was July 1st, when there was a big protest. I tried to get into Hong Kong. I was blocked at the airport. They actually used brutal force to force me into a wheelchair. And I was bleeding. It was horrible. This was last year. So I couldn't go to Hong Kong even then. I don't think I can go now, but I would love to give it a try sometime.
The world, frankly, did not act against China after 1989. 3 decades later, Hong Kong is being crushed. Would you describe what is happening in Hong Kong as another Tiananmen-like moment in China's story?
Yes, it's very similar, especially for the young people like Joshua Wong, Agnes Chow. I was with them during the umbrella movement 6 years ago. To me, it was so like Tiananmen protest once again, so useful, idealistic, so peaceful, and so well supported by people all over the world. But eventually, with such a totalitarian regime in place, there's no difference in the result now. 31 years later. I hope, of course, the international community would eventually wake up to this reality that trade technology cannot change China. And China has to be democratized for it to be a force of peace in the world. Otherwise, it is a threat. And it is expanding. With the national security law, it's not only Hong Kong who is in danger. People outside of Hong Kong are feeling it too. For example, the students of Princeton and Harvard, they have to do self-censorship on any topic related to this. This is the first time that U.S. universities would do this to protect, for example, the students because of national security law. And they actually put Samuel Chu, who is a US citizen, on the most wanted list. They want to use that example to threaten everyone in the world. So the international community has to fight back. There has to be a coordinated effort to contain, to confront.
Do you believe the world is doing enough to deter China even after this pandemic that brought the entire world to a halt?
No. I think India has done a really good job of banning all the Chinese apps. That's a great move. That's what I have been calling for a long time. I applaud India for doing that. And United States is leading the way in terms of sanctions against Hong Kong and trade. But to me, I think we need more people to join, more countries to join. For example, the European countries, Germany, they are largely behind on this. They are still emphasizing profit over human rights. That's not good. And communist China is very good at separating and dividing and conquer. So I think these people, they have to realize if China dominates the world, there's no freedom for anyone, nobody. They never have their goal. The goal is to be the master of the world, to be the engineer of everybody's soul. And we cannot just turn blind eyes to this. We have to confront it head on.
How do you see China's military adventurism in the neighborhood, the aggression that we see in the South China Sea and the border conflict with India?
As I said before, there will not be lasting peace if China is a totalitarian regime. The way I see it now, China is on the way to become second Nazi Germany. the way it's going now. For example, the way they consume Hong Kong like this. This is very similar to what Hitler did at the beginning of his invasion. And so we have to wake up early and deter it early. For Xi Jinping himself, he has the ambition of the emperor, meaning he has to show something outside of China as his achievement. So that's why he's so belligerent at every front. He wants to legitimize his permanent leadership, emperor-like leadership. He needs some achievement, some jewel to put on his crown. And for that, he needs external conquer. So I think there will be definitely South China Sea, other places, Taiwan, Japan, there will be some conflict, some real conflict.
Are you afraid for your life still?
No, I mean, I'm a survivor. 31 years ago, so many people died. It could be me. So to me, my life is precious. I need to make the best use of it at every moment. I know there's a lot of risk in what I'm doing. I will just confront it head on. To me, the fact that they would use so much resource against me, meaning I'm doing something right.
My final question to you, Fengsuo Zhou, what is your message for the people of China today?
China will democratize, and that's the way of the future. To live with dignity, freedom, human rights, and property rights. And we have to go through this process, no matter how painful it will be. From a totalitarian regime into a democratic country, into a civil society. And it doesn't matter how tough the hurdle is now, or how tightly they can control the society. Because this regime is against history, is against human nature. They will be washed away by the tide of history.
Fengsuo Zhou, thanks very much for joining us here on Beyond, and more power to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.